Welcome back to the deep dive. I was looking at the stack of research we have for today, the articles on botany, the history of the transatlantic trade, the culinary chemistry papers, and I realized something.
Mm.
We usually do these deep dives on, like, the future of AI or the collapse of the Bronze Age. Big, structural, heavy topics.
And you don't think today is heavy?
Well, it is, but it's heavy in a different way. It's heavy in calories. No, that's not fair.
No.
It's heavy in history. But usually when we talk about food, we talk about it like a Yelp review. Is it good? Is it spicy? Where can I get the best burrito?
Right, surface level. You want to know if it tastes good, not necessarily the socioeconomic factors that put the burrito on your plate.
Exactly. But the mission for this deep dive is completely different. We are looking at the food of West Africa, specifically Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, and the food of the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, Barbados.
A huge swath of the
A
world.
huge swath. And the hook here, the thing that actually blew my mind in the reading, is that we aren't supposed to look at them as two different cuisines.
No, absolutely not. If you look at the data, they aren't cousins. They're the same person at different stages of life.
The sources argue they're actually one single organism, one lineage. It's just that one part of the family stayed home and the other part was forced to move across an ocean and reinvent itself under some of the most brutal conditions imaginable.
That's a great way to put it. The term that kept popping up in my notes was ancestral remix theory.
Ancestral remix. It sounds like a DJ set.
In a way, it is. I mean, think about a piece of music. You have the bass line, the rhythm, the melody. If you take that song and you move it to a studio in Kingston, Jamaica, or Port of Spain, Trinidad, and you swap out the instruments.
Right.
Maybe you don't have a saxophone, so you use a trumpet. Maybe you don't have a drum kit, so you use a steel pan. The instruments change, but the score, the rhythm, it's identical.
So the thesis here is that West African food didn't just influence Caribbean food. It became Caribbean food by swapping out the hardware because the software was already installed in the minds of the people.
Precisely. And that's what we're going to trace today. We're going to look at the grammar of this food. And I want to be clear about that word grammar. We aren't just talking about recipes. Recipes are like sentences. We're talking about the underlying rules that make the language work.
And the sources boil that grammar down to a pretty specific definition. I have it here. A bold, communal, stew and grill cuisine built on starch and sauce pairings.
Starch and sauce. If you take nothing else away from this hour, take that. That is the binary code of the entire lineage.
It's the core loop.
It is the core loop. Whether you are in a village in 16th century Yorubaland or a takeout joint in Brixton today, the logic holds. You have a neutral, dense starch vehicle, and you have a high-octane, spicy, savory stew engine.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have a roadmap for today. We are going to start at the roots, the indigenous West African foundation. We need to understand what was happening before the ships arrived. Then we're going to look at the bridge, the middle passage, and the provision grounds where the remix happened. Then we'll hit the branches, the specific personalities of Jamaica, Nigeria, Trinidad, and finally, the soul, the philosophy of why this food tastes the way it does.
It's a massive history. It covers botany, chemistry, slavery, and celebration.
So let's get into the weeds. Segment 1, the foundation. I want to start with the correction. The sources spend a lot of time debunking this, and I think it's important. There is this lazy assumption in the West that pre-colonial African food was just subsistence.
Right.
People shaking a tree and eating whatever fell out. Simple village food.
That is a myth that needs to die immediately. The research we looked at paints a completely different picture. Pre-15th century West Africa was an incredibly sophisticated agricultural machine. It wasn't random. It was highly scientific. And more importantly, it was hyper-regional.
Because the geography dictates the menu.
Geography is destiny. You have to look at the map. West Africa isn't one ecosystem. It's bands, horizontal bands.
Right, so down south, near the coast Lagos, Accra, what are we looking at?
That's the tropical rainforest zone. High humidity, tons of rain. You can't grow wheat there. Wheat would rot in the field from the moisture. So what do you grow? You grow tubers, specifically yams.
And when we say yam, we need to have the yam talk.
Oh, we have to. This is one of my biggest pet peeves.
Because I go to the supermarket in the U.S. and I buy a sweet potato with orange flesh, and the sign says yam.
That is not a yam. That is a sweet potato, ipomoya batatas. A true African yam, Dioscorea, is a completely different beast. It's a tuber. It has bark like a tree almost. It's white inside, starchy, and not very sweet. And it can grow to be massive, like the size of a toddler's leg.
A toddler's leg. Okay, so this is the engine of the calorie intake in the South.
It's the yam belt. The entire culture revolves around the New Yam Festival. It is the staff of life. But then if you travel northwest up towards Senegal and Mali, the landscape changes. You hit the Sahel.
Right, the dry zone.
It's dry, it's arid. Yams can't survive there because they need moisture. So what happens to the cuisine?
It switches to grains.
Exactly. Millet, sorghum, later rice. So right off the bat, you have two distinct software systems running in West Africa. The tuber system in the south and the grain system in the north.
But, and this is the key, the way they ate them was the same. This goes back to that DNA strand you mentioned. The formula.
Zamula, starch plus stew. In the West, we have a meat and 3 veg mentality. You have a steak, that's the star, and maybe some potatoes on the side.
Yeah.
In West Africa, that hierarchy is inverted. The starch is the main event.
It's the vehicle.
It's the utensil. This is the concept of the swallow. Fufu, pounded yam, banku. These are dough-like balls made by pounding that starch until the gluten in the starch is polymerized into this stretchy, smooth texture.
And the sources make a big point about the texture. You don't chew fufu.
You do not chew. If you chew, you're doing it wrong. You pitch off a piece, you make an indentation with your thumb, a little spoon, you scoop up the soup, you swallow it whole. It's a tactile experience. It slides down.
Which explains why slimy textures like okra are prized there. Whereas in the West, people freak out if their food is slimy.
Slimy is a derogatory word in English. In Nigeria, the word is draw.
Yeah.
You want the soup to draw. You want that viscosity because it helps the starch slide down the throat. It's functional engineering of the food.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Precisely, a feature. So we have the starch. Now we need the flavor, the stew. And this is where we get into the ancestors of flavor, the specific ingredients that define the palate. Number 1 on the list, red palm oil.
Red gold.
Red gold.
Now, again, we need a disclaimer. We aren't talking about the clear, refined palm oil that's in processed cookies and is destroying the rainforests in Indonesia. This is different.
No. We are talking about Elaeus guineensis, unrefined rye red palm oil. It is thick, it is bright orange red because it's packed with beta-carotene, and it has a very specific flavor.
How would you describe it? I've heard people say it's an acquired taste.
It's earthy. It smells like wet soil and vegetation after it rains. It's savory. It's not just a fat that you cook in, it's a flavor that you cook with. It stains everything, that beautiful sunset orange color. It provides a richness that butter or olive oil just can't replicate.
So that's the best line. Then we have the umami bomb. And this was fascinating to me because we think of umami as a Japanese concept. We think MSG, soy sauce. But West Africa had this unlocked centuries ago.
Long before Maggi cubes invented MSG, West African grandmothers were using fermentation, specifically fermented locust beans. In Nigeria, it's called iru. In Ghana, dawa dawa.
I looked up a video of this being made. It doesn't look appetizing during the process.
Fermentation never does. It's controlled rotting. Locust beans are boiled, buried, and left to ferment for days until they turn dark and sticky. And the smell, it is pungent.
Pungent like good cheese or pungent like gym sauce?
Pungent like aggressive cheese mixed with dirty feet. It's potent.
Sure.
I know. But here is the magic. When you take that funky, smelly bean and you drop it into hot oil, the smell transforms. The heat breaks down those volatile compounds. And what you are left with is pure, concentrated glutamate. It gives the stew a depth, a meatiness that you cannot get from salt alone.
It's the secret weapon. It connects the palate to the brain.
It makes the food more-ish. You eat it and your mouth waters and you want more. That is the Iru effect.
Okay, so we have the starch, the vehicle, the oil, the base, and the fermentation, the depth. The last piece of the foundation is the protein. And the sources point out that fresh meat, like a fresh steak, was actually kind of rare.
It was a luxury. You didn't kill a goat every Tuesday. Yeah. Livestock was wealth. So for the day-to-day eating, the protein came from the sea or the river. But again, because of the climate, hot, humid, no refrigeration, you had to preserve it.
Smoking and drying.
Everything was smoked. Fish, shrimp. They were dried until they were hard as rocks. Then you would grind them into a powder or break them into chunks and add them to the stew.
So the fish isn't just a chunk of meat floating in the bowl. It dissolves into the sauce. It becomes part of the liquid.
Exactly. It layers the flavor. You have the earthiness of the palm oil, the funk of the locust bean, and the smokiness of the dried fish. That triad. That is the flavor profile of pre-colonial West Africa.
And all of this culminates in the social bowl. The sources included these incredible images of families eating. It's not individual plates.
No, the concept of my plate is very Western. The food is placed in a large central vessel. The starch is in the middle. The soup is around it. and everyone sits around the circumference.
It changes the psychology of dinner, doesn't it? You can't just zone out.
You have to negotiate.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of how much you are taking versus the person next to you. It teaches hierarchy. The elders get the best meat. It teaches sharing. It bonds you physically to your kin. You are literally eating from the same supply.
So that is the system. It's robust, it's scientific, and it's deeply communal. And then the ships arrive.
The rupture.
Segment 2, the Atlantic Bridge. This is where the story gets dark, obviously, in the Middle Passage. But the sources focus on something very specific here. We know millions of people were stolen, but the sources talk about what they brought with them, not in their luggage. They didn't have luggage. But what they brought in their pockets and in their minds.
This is the concept of botanical resistance. We have historical records of enslaved women braiding seeds into their hair before boarding the ships. Okra seeds, black-eyed peas, watermelon seeds.
That is an incredible image. Braiding the future into your hair because you don't know where you're going.
It was an insurance policy against the unknown.
Yeah.
But even more valuable than the seeds was the mental cargo, the intellectual property.
The sources mention rice specifically here, and this blew the lid off a myth I learned in school. I was taught that English colonists taught the enslaved Africans how to grow rice in South Carolina.
Which is laughable when you look at the agronomy. The British didn't know how to grow rice. They were wheat farmers. They looked at the swamps of South Carolina and saw disease and mud. They had no idea how to manage that landscape.
But the West Africans saw opportunity?
Specifically, people from the Senegambia region, Rice Coast. They had been hydraulic engineers for centuries. They grew Oryza glaberrima, African rice. They knew how to build levees, how to manage tidal flows, how to desalinate the soil.
So the plantation owners were specifically targeting them?
Yes, they didn't just buy bodies. They were specifically targeting skilled labor from these regions.
So the rice industry of the Americas, which generated massive wealth, was literally built on African intellectual property.
100%. The technology was African. The labor was African. The only thing that was European was the ownership of the profit.
So they arrive in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad. They are working the sugarcane fields. It's brutal. But they still have to eat. And this is where the remix begins. The sources talk about provision grounds. What were those?
This is the laboratory. The plantation owners were frankly cheap. They didn't want to spend money importing food for hundreds of enslaved people. So they gave them the marginal land, the rocky hillsides, the ravines, and said, grow your own food. Sunday is your day. Feed yourselves.
Do feed yourselves if you don't have to.
It was cynical, yes, but it backfired in a beautiful way. Because on those plots of land, away from the oversight of the overseers, the enslaved people reconstructed their culture. They planted the okra seeds, they grew the yams, but they ran into a problem.
Well, hardware was missing.
Right. They had a software, the recipes, the techniques, but some of the key ingredients just didn't exist in the Caribbean.
The biggest missing piece being the red palm oil.
Correct. No palm oil trees. So you lose your cooking fat, but more importantly, you lose your color and that specific savory flavor base.
So what do?
You improvise. You look around. What do you have in abundance? You're on a sugar plantation, you have sugar.
But sugar is sweet. Palm oil is savory. How does that swap work?
This is the genius moment. They took the sugar and they burned it. They caramelized it past the point of sweetness until it turned black and bitter. Browning. When you burn sugar, you are creating complex flavor compounds. Bitterness, depth, color. It mimics the richness and the dark color of the missing palm oil. It's a phantom limb. They use sugar to recreate the memory of home.
That is the definition of the remix, using the crop of your oppression to recreate the taste of your freedom.
Exactly. And you see this everywhere. No millet, fine, we use the rice. No dried smoked fish.
Yeah.
We use the salt cod that the British are importing from Canada and cheap rations.
The salt cod thing is interesting because salt cod bacalhau is a European ingredient.
It is. But the way they used it, they treated it exactly like the smoked fish in the village. They broke it down, flaked it, and used it to season the pot. Yeah. They Africanized the ingredient. They didn't cook it like a European fillet. They used it as a seasoning agent.
It becomes part of the sauce.
And this leads to the one-pot evolution. The economics of time. You are working 14 hours a day cutting cane. You do not have time to pound fufu for 2 hours. You do not have 3 pots to wash. You have 1 iron pot, and you have fire.
So everything goes in at once.
Rice, peas, meat, coconut milk, peppers. Lid on. Steam it down.
Pala, jambalaya, rice and peas.
Efficiency born of necessity but flavored with memory. That is the bridge. That is how the food survived the ocean. It was compressed, adapted, and preserved.
So we've crossed the bridge, we've landed in the New World. Now let's look at how this shared DNA split into the specific branches we know today. Segment 3, the regional personalities. And we have to start with the heavyweight championship of West Africa.
Oh, yeah.
The Jollof Wars.
It's the culinary anime arc of the continent.
But before we get to the wars, let's set the stage. We are back in West Africa now, looking at the modern evolution. Let's start with Senegal, the elegant coast.
Senegal is fascinating because it sits right on that fault line between the desert and the ocean. The flavor profile is incredibly bright and aromatic.
And the key dish is tabbouleh.
Yes. And historians argue this is the grandmother of jollof rice. Thieve means rice, dien means fish. It's a one-pot dish of broken rice, which is important. Broken rice releases more starch, fish, and vegetables. But what makes Senegal unique is the yassa profile.
I love yassa chicken. It's so tangy.
That's the key word, tangy. It's basically an onion confit. You cook down massive amounts of onions with mustard, which is a French colonial influence, and lime juice or vinegar. It creates this sharp, acidic profile that cuts right through the fat.
It's very different from the heavier stews further south.
It is. It's lighter, more citrus forward. Now, compare that to Ghana, the earthy balance.
Ghana was where I first tried fufu, and the fufu there is different from the Nigerian version, right?
It is. In Ghana, fufu is usually a mix of cassava and plantain pounded together. It's very smooth, very elastic, and it's almost always served with light soup.
Which, I have to say, is a misleading name. It is not light like a diet soup.
Not at all. It's light only in viscosity compared to the thick palm nut soups. It's a spicy, tomato-based broth, usually with goat or fish. But my favorite Ghanaian dish, and the one the sources highlight for its lineage, is red.
Best name for a dish ever. What makes it red?
Palm oil. It's black-eyed peas stewed in red palm oil until they are soft and creamy, served with fried plantains. It's sweet from the plantain, savory from the beans, and earthy from the oil. It's the perfect bite.
And then we arrive at the giant, Nigeria. The sources describe Nigerian food as big, layered, loud.
If Ghana is a smooth jazz ensemble, Nigeria is a full brass band with pyrotechnics. The philosophy in Nigeria is more heat, more spice, more fermentation.
And this brings us to the jollof rivalry. For listeners who don't know, Ghana and Nigeria are in a permanent state of Cold War over who makes better rice.
It is serious business, and the difference tells you everything about the regional personalities. Ghanaian jollof uses basmati or perfumed rice, and it's more aromatic. Nigerian jollof uses long-grain parboiled rice, and it is all about the smoke.
The party rice flavor.
Yes. It's cooked over firewood. They intentionally burn the bottom of the pot to infuse that smoky, charred flavor into the grains. It's spicy, it's aggressive, and it's delicious.
You want that crust at the bottom.
You fight over that crust at the bottom. And we can't talk about Nigeria without mentioning egusi. This is a texture that trips up a lot of Westerners.
It does. It looks like scrambled eggs in the soup.
It does. Egusi is made from ground melon seeds. It creates a curd-like, almost scrambled egg texture in the soup. It's rich and fatty. It clings to the starch. It's not a smooth sauce. It's a textured eating experience.
So that's the West African lineup. Bright Senegal, balanced Ghana, bold Nigeria. Now, let's jump back across the Atlantic to the Caribbean branches in segment 4. Let's start with the one everyone thinks they know, Jamaica, the smoky fire.
Jamaica is the direct spiritual successor to those West African preservation techniques. You really see it in jerk.
We think of jerk as just a flavor of chips now, or a marinade you buy in a bottle. But originally, it wasn't about flavor, it was about survival.
Exactly. This goes back to the Maroons, escaped enslaved people living in the Blue Mountains. They were fighting a guerrilla war against the British. They needed to preserve wild boar meat.
But they couldn't build big fires because the smoke would give away their position.
Right. So they dug pits. They buried the meat over low, smokeless coals covered with pimento wood and spices. It was underground slow cooking. That is the origin of jerk.
And the flavor profile is dominated by two things: allspice and Scotch bonnet.
Pimento, allspice, is native to Jamaica. It has the flavor of clove, cinnamon, and nutmeg all in one, and the Scotch bonnet pepper.
We need to clarify this. It isn't just hot.
The sources are very specific about this. It's fruity and floral.
Exactly. If you get past the burn, and it is a significant burn, it tastes like tropical fruit, almost like apricot or peach. That combination, smoky char, floral heat, and the earthy allspice, that is the fingerprint of Jamaica.
Okay, next up, Trinidad and Tobago, the global fusion. This is where the remix gets complex because another continent enters the chat. Trinidad is fascinating because of the post-emancipation shift. After slavery ended in the 1830s, The British realized the formerly enslaved people weren't going to work for free anymore, so they looked for a new labor source.
And they turned to India.
The indentured labor system. They brought thousands of people from India to Trinidad. And what did they bring? Curry leaves, turmeric, cumin, coriander.
So in Trinidad, you get this collision of West African stew logic with Indian spice palettes.
Hence, curry goat. And doubles.
Doubles is the ultimate street food. I watched a video of a vendor making this. It's lightning fast.
It has to be. It's 2 pieces of fried dough, bara, filled with curried chickpeas, but the toppings. Cucumber chutney, tamarind sauce, pepper sauce. It's a flavor bomb.
It's incredible.
But you also have pilau, which we mentioned earlier. That is a one-pot rice dish that starts with that browning burnt sugar. It's African technique plus Indian ingredients. And the green seasoning.
Oh, right, the marinade.
Yes, the marinade culture.
Yeah.
Blending cilantro, which is like a stronger, spikier cilantro, thyme, scallions, and peppers into a green paste and rubbing it on everything. That is the signature.
Moving on to Haiti, the refined acid.
Haiti is unique because it was a French colony, and it became the first Black Republic very early on. The food reflects that independence and that French legacy. You see a lot of citrus, sour orange, and vinegar.
The key dish mentioned is griot.
Cubes of pork, marinated in citrus and épis, which is their version of green seasoning, boiled until tender and then fried until crisp. But it's almost always served with pickles.
That spicy slaw.
It's cabbage, carrots, Scotch bonnet peppers, all pickled in vinegar. It is incredibly sharp and spicy, cuts right through the fatty pork. That balance of fat and acid is very Haitian.
Finally, Barbados, the coastal structure.
Barbados is a coral island, very flat, very British colonial history. The key dish here is cuckoo and flying fish.
Now, cuckoo sounds a lot like fufu.
It is the direct cousin. It's phonetically similar. But because cassava wasn't as prevalent or preferred by the British supply chains there, they used cornmeal. So it's like a firm polenta mixed with okra.
Wow.
But the logic starch vehicle plus savory stew is exactly the same as in Ghana.
It's amazing to see how the same software produces different results depending on the hardware available in each island.
That is the perfect analogy. The algorithm's the same, the inputs change.
So we've tasted the food. Now I want to get into the mind of the cook. Segment 5, the philosophy of taste and texture. Because this food doesn't play by French culinary rules.
No.
If you go to culinary school in Paris, they teach you certain things are wrong that are right here.
Correct. And this is where people often get lost if they don't understand the philosophy. It starts with the flavor base.
We talked about this a bit. You don't just sear a steak and put sauce on top.
Never. The flavor is built from the bottom up. In West Africa, it's the red stew base. You take tomatoes, onions, and peppers, you blend them, and you fry them in oil until the water evaporates and the oil separates.
That oil separation is key, right? I've seen recipes say cook until the oil floats. In Western cooking, seeing a pool of oil on top is usually a mistake. It means the sauce broke.
In West African cooking, that is the sign of success. It means you have driven out the moisture and concentrated the flavor. The oil is now flavored. It's not just grease, it's the sauce. The tomatoes have caramelized in the oil. That is the foundation.
And in the Caribbean, that base is the green seasoning or the browning.
Right. You are marinating the meat first, sometimes for days. Then you are cooking that marinade down. It's about permeation. The flavor has to go all the way through the meat to the bone, not just sit on the surface.
Let's talk about texture. The sources say it's not delicate food.
It prioritizes mouthfeel. We mentioned the chew. West African and Korean cooks often like meat that has some resistance: goat, oxtail, tripe.
It's not about meat that falls apart if you look at it. You want to work for it a little.
And the contrast.
Soft fufu with liquid soup, crunchy fried plantain with soft beans. It's a tactile experience. You want to feel the food.
And then the heat. We touched on this with the Scotch bonnet, but there is a philosophy to the spiciness.
It's the concept of the slow burn. A lot of people think, oh, it's just spicy to be painful. No. The heat is layered into the pot early. It cooks down, it opens up your palate, it makes you sweat a little, which actually cools you down in the tropics. But it's meant to be an aromatic heat, not a stinging heat.
It wakes you up.
It demands your attention. You can't eat this food mindlessly while watching TV. It forces you to be present.
That leads us perfectly into segment 6, the cultural significance. Because if you can't eat it mindlessly, you definitely can't eat it alone. The big pot energy. That's what the sources call it. In Senegal, everyone eating from one bowl isn't just logistics. It's a lesson in social cohesion. You eat from the section in front of you. You wait for the host to distribute the best pieces of meat or fish. You learn patience.
And in the Caribbean, the Sunday lunch is a huge deal.
It is a non-negotiable institution. Rice and peas, chicken, salad, plantain, maybe some macaroni pie. In Jamaica or Trinidad, that is the anchor of the week. It's where conflicts are resolved, where family news is shared. If you miss Sunday lunch, you are making this statement.
There is also this idea of hospitality as performance.
Yes. The rule is, if you visit, you must eat, and the host must provide. Even in poverty, and we have to remember, these cuisines were forged in scarcity, the pot is always full.
Abundance as expression.
Exactly. Serving a guest a small, measured, restaurant-style portion would be seen as stingy, almost offensive. You pile the plate high. It says, I have enough to care for you, I am surviving, and I can help you survive too.
It's resilience, isn't it?
That is the word. The source quote really hit me. West African cuisine didn't disappear, it camouflaged itself. Cooking traditional food during slavery was an act of quiet resistance. Keeping those flavors alive, remembering how to make the stew, growing the okra in the provision grounds, that was a way of saying, you can own my labor, but you cannot own my culture.
And now, looking at the modern context, we see jollof rice and jerk chicken becoming global icons.
They are global superstars. You can get jerk in London, jollof in New York, roti in Toronto. And what is interesting is that fine dining is finally catching up.
Right.
We're seeing chefs trading palm oil, fermented locust beans, and Scotch bonnets with the same reverence that French chefs treat truffles and cream.
About time.
It is a reclaiming of the narrative. It's saying our food isn't just cheap eats. It is complex, historical, and valuable.
So, bring this all together. We've looked at the roots in the Yam Belt and the Sahel. We've crossed the tragic bridge of the Atlantic and seen the innovation in the provision grounds. We've tasted the brightness of Senegal, the boldness of Nigeria, the smoke of Jamaica, and the curry of Trinidad.
And we've seen that the grammar starch plus stew, flavor bases, communal eating remained intact. The ingredients changed. Yam became rice, palm oil became browning, but the philosophy, the soul of the food survived.
It survived and it thrives.
It's an ancestral remix that is still playing today.
Here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on and for our listeners. We talked about how the food adapted from Africa to the Caribbean, but now with globalization, we are seeing another shift. We were seeing ingredients that were once survival food, oxtails, fermented beans becoming luxury items. Oxtail is expensive now.
It is. It used to be the throwaway cut. Now it's $15 a pound.
And we are seeing the diaspora looping back. Caribbean chefs in London are looking back to West Africa to re-Africanize their dishes, bringing palm oil back into Caribbean stews. The remix is getting a remix.
It's a circular exchange now. The conversation between the continents is open again. The ocean isn't a barrier anymore, it's a highway.
So next time you order a bowl of curry goat or a plate of jollof, don't just taste the spice. Look for the lineage, look for the starch that holds it down, and the stew that brings the life.
Taste the history in the pot.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.